Hey everyone, welcome back to Cabrillo. I'm Prez, and this is episode 4. Last episode we built the downtown skyline, and those are the skyscrapers you're basically going to see throughout the series. This episode we're turning towards the waterfront. We're going to be building a beautiful waterfront park that's really diverse and has tons of different structures. We're also going to be building a historic Little Italy district, and all the while we're going to be having a discussion over what makes these spaces so good and how important public space is. The first thing we have to do is take a look at Inspiration Station. This is our segment where we go over the inspiration for the episode. This is Portland's waterfront. I want something like this, basically, where there's just a really extensive just line of seawall that people can walk across, bike across, just overlook the water and have green spaces. We're also going to be looking at Pittsburgh because of the geography of our city. We're going to be looking at Point Park, or Point State Park here in Pittsburgh. Not exactly sure what locals call it, but it's basically this park at the point where the rivers converge, and we're going to be building something like this with a monument. I think you're really going to like it. Finally, we're going to be taking a look at North Beach in San Francisco, not really for the architecture. I mean, we're going to be kind of having the same kind of architecture you'll see in like somewhere like Oakland's, where there are a bunch of Victorians like there are in SF, but it's not as heavy on them. Like, we're not building San Francisco. Not really looking at this for the architecture or layout or anything. I'm looking at it for the public life. North Beach is known for being very historically walkable and also historically Italian. It's probably about as Italian as you're going to get on the West Coast, at least as far as I know. If you know of any more Little Italy type districts. I know there's one in San Diego, or at least that far north. North Beach seems to be the one. Let me know if you know of others that I kind of didn't mention, but the point is, Italians do live on the West Coast, and there are Little Italies scattered throughout the cities, and we're definitely going to have one here, and it's going to be a historically protected community as well. The street's going to, basically just these couple of blocks have just been protected over time from redevelopment. We'll talk about that a little later once we start building that. You see I placed those seabed wharves. I don't actually keep them here. I'm probably going to end up moving them to a different part of the waterfront, because we only built kind of half of the waterfront park. The other half is going to be further east, if you kind of know the geography of Cabrillo, and I'm planning on building hopefully like an Old West district that was recommended. I want to build an Old West district like there is in Sacramento and Folsom. And then also builds, those wharves and various other fixtures of public life and history in Cabrillo. So anyway, we're placing some basketball courts here to start off. We'll place probably more stuff like this in the future. I don't consider anything we do today final. I just really wanted to get it on the map and not go crazy with detail. I also don't want to destroy my frame rate immediately, so we'll probably end up coming back to all of these districts later in the series and adding more detail. I just want to expand the city really quickly right now. That's really my main goal, and while I do that, I want to talk about different urban planning concepts and values I want to share with you. And the concept I want to talk about today is public space. And that might sound like a really abstract concept. Like, yeah, we all support public space where we can, we all like parks, but public space is a really specific thing. And it really, at least to me, means democratic space where people of all backgrounds can come together, and allows for free speech, free expression, all of the things that you might value in a democratic society. And space really matters in that regard. You can meet all the metrics of being a democratic society, but if you don't have a infrastructure for public interaction, then it doesn't really matter. So let's kind of talk about what public space actually means in real life, and just some examples of it. First, we can go for Central Park in Manhattan. Frederick Law Olmsted famously built Central Park and Prospect Park and many other parks, including the Emerald Necklace, it's called, in Boston, which is a beautiful, way ahead of its time park system. Anyway, when Olmsted designed Central Park, he really had in mind creating this space that was democratic, that kind of brought people of all different classes together, and it was an ideal that lives on in planning discourse to this day. And once again, it might seem really abstract, but I've referenced him before, but I think he's got really excellent argumentation here. Mike Davis, he's a labor historian, geographer. He he has some writings on how public space has kind of been destroyed in suburban communities across the country, across the world. And what he says, and focusing on LA, is malls will be designed in ways that don't foster public displays of free speech. They're heavily surveilled. For example, malls, they're private property. They can restrict the exercise of free speech and what you say, because they're not really, private companies aren't subject to the Constitution. And as a result, like, instead of being able to hold a pride march or whatever you want to hold down Main Street, you can't really do that in a mall, and that's where all the people are, but you're not able to exercise your free speech there. Further than that, I mean, malls are able to, they have a right to refuse service. They're able to keep, like, quote, undesirables out. And the problem with that is it just creates, it creates atomized spaces where people are, we think about segregation racially, but it takes all different forms, and class segregation is also really important, and that's what destruction of public space does. And so I use the mall example because you can compare it to a main street where vibrant public life, everybody's walking around, and you're able to exercise free speech. But then meanwhile, when that gets transferred to a different space that's not publicly governed, democratically governed, it really transforms the space in a bad way most of the time. Another example of public space that you could think of might even be people don't usually think of this as public space, but like the subway, the bus, and places where people of different backgrounds will come together, and depending on what mode of public transportation, it'll maybe tend to be a certain class or another, but there is a lot more interaction and like mixing in these places, public transportation, in public parks like Central Park, that is really valuable to a democratic society, because it makes it so that we're not completely separated from each other. We're not atomized into our own little communities that we've sectioned ourselves off into, separated from the rest of society. Space really matters, and it's I'm a political economy major. I really love thinking about historically how we've distributed resources and what kind of social and cultural factors have contributed to that. And that's why public space is so important to me, because it really, on a geographic level, on a human level, it really allows us to interact with each other. Like this park I'm building right now here, at the point here of Cabrillo, it's going to be a space where anybody's allowed to come here and maybe play their guitar and receive donations, or maybe they're an artist painting the monument there. Maybe they're a cyclist. People of all different walks of life are able to unite in these spaces, and it seriously matters. And the ways that it matters are not quantifiable. They're not quantifiable in these ways where we can measure them. Like we've maximized happiness in these 5 ways to these 5 degrees. You can't really measure these kinds of things, but they're really important nonetheless. And I really hope that looking at what we're building here and how integrated it is. Like in the last episode, we did a poll on whether you should be able, whether on the waterfront there should be any building development. Resoundingly, it was like a 92% yes vote on that. So people wanted building development, but I gave the proviso that people would be able to access these paths publicly. Like these are publicly owned paths. Even patios in these buildings are publicly managed, so they are truly public space, and you can't be kicked off these paths because the brutalist Hyatt next door wants to kick you off. Anyway, I really just hope that you think about what I've been discussing, because it's not really a discussion we often have. These aren't really issues that are like sexy issues to bring up in national elections, but they are political issues. Like people tell, like every once in a while I'll get a comment like, Prez, stop talking about politics. I want to watch and it's like, well, city planning is politics, and city planning as a community process is politics. The spaces I create are political. Whether it's a mall or a park, they're gonna foster interaction differently, and interaction between classes and races differently, and all of these outcomes that really do matter. And I really hope you think about spaces as political. Either way. But anyway, hopefully you got something out of that. We're beginning to build Little Italy here, and we're placing a bunch of these buildings, mostly from Gilded Age. They are amazing buildings, and I didn't download all of the Little Italy assets because some of them, the architecture didn't quite work for this. Some of them, I just didn't want to download too many because I'm trying to keep my asset count down. But I downloaded a bunch and also reused some signs and stuff, and it ends up turning out great. Just excuse the trees here. I'm experimenting. They'll make the buildings a little more visible later on in the video. But I'm just messing around with those because I do want to make sure these streets are tree lined, and there are a bunch of streets where I placed buildings before placing trees. Don't do that. If you're building an avenue where you're not placing trees with network skins or anything, make sure that you place your trees before you place the buildings so the sidewalks are wide enough, and don't be an idiot like me and just place the buildings first. So I'm gonna have to go back and fix that. But since I was building this from scratch, I was able to place the trees before everything, and it ended up looking a lot better, a lot more, it was a lot easier to build, basically. Anyway, how does Little Italy here tie into the discussion of public space? Well, it's a community that's been here for a long time, and here in Little Italy, there are businesses that have been family owned for generations, and gathering spaces, and a term that's been used as like sacred places, not in like the religious sense, but just places that people have a unquantifiable yet strong attachment to. And you might have places like that in your life. I definitely do. And there's really a sense of place here in Little Italy and Cabrillo because the people who live in these apartments have been here forever, and their kids might stay, might not, but their grandparents might have lived here, and it's a very grounded community. But really, public space here is the restaurants, the barber shops, the bars, the park. We're gonna build a historic park here. St. Paul Park, we're starting that right now. This has been a place that people in the community have gone to forever, and the social ties that are enabled by this park are really important. And it is true public space. Anybody from other districts in the city can come here as well. I'm sure tourists come here as well. It's not just people in the community, just tons of different people will come here, but the point is it enables this interaction between the community that truly makes it a connected and and rich place. And this park, St. Paul Park, it's been here for a long time. You see those apartments overlook it, so there are, as Jane Jacobs might say, eyes on the street or on the park, in this case, which means that people are watching people's kids while they play, like impersonally. They're just their eyes on the public spaces, just so that they're safer, and it's less likely that there would be crime in places with lots of eyes on the street, basically. And that's another reason why mixed-use developments, beyond walkability, just is really important. So definitely consider that as you're building your cities, and maybe making, even if the crime statistics in city skylines won't really show it, having eyes on the street can contribute to a safer community. Anyway, now we've moved a couple blocks away. I'm just kind of filling in some space here because I want the city to feel a little more complete than it currently does before we end the episode. So I've placed, we're not going to have too much surface parking here. Just imagine, imaginary underground parking throughout the city, which is kind of the most economical because land values in downtown Cabrillo are astronomical. There's very limited space here in the peninsula, and it is very expensive to live here in downtown Cabrillo. Also, in this episode, we're going to have a kind of a different final sequence. Like usually I'll, I've been experimenting a little bit, but for Cabrillo, I'll have a flyover, tour where I show what I just built after, some flyovers of some poles. But in this episode, we're going to be doing something a little different. Everything is going to be a static shot, and there's going to be in-game audio for everything, no music. I really want you to get a feel for all of these areas, these spaces that we created in this video. and all of the life that they have to offer. Before we continue, because my FPS is going to get worse than it is right now, and I really want to make sure that you can get a little bit of a grasp of how vital these districts are to the city, or well, how vital Little Italy is, and how vital the park is to the city. But anyway, yeah, we're gonna hop in game here. Well, I'm not in game, but we're gonna be looking at Concord Square, which is a name that Anna came up with in the comments of the last video. The full story is on screen if you want to pause and take a look at it. But anyway, this plot of lands, where on the building on the right there is City Hall. The building on the left is a really important financial center. This is now a public plaza since 1970, but it used to be Camp Cabrillo, which was Thomas Walker and the Walker Party. Founded in the gold rush, and the town was kind of built around it. Then the Walker Mansion was built there, ended up falling into disrepair and being replaced with a park in the 1970s. But now you've got this federal building across the street. It's a really important spot for public life. I love this story, and I think it's a really interesting way for the town might have come about. I do think that the Camp Cabrillo is kind of built around, or like within an existing town, though, because the city was incorporated in 1845, so right before the gold rush, but became a more prominent town due to the gold rush. And Camp Cabrillo was built hastily, maybe within the town that already existed. But I really love that story, so thank you, Anna. Anyway, now for this episode's vote. Make sure your voice is heard here, because these 4 blocks here in downtown could become a park, an urban greenway that people are able to congregate in, with plazas, squares, statues, ride their bikes through, do all of the things that you might associate with vibrant public life that we talked about in this video. Or it could be developed with buildings that might be historical, might be modern, and fill the city more densely. Let me know in the comments what you think, but vote in the description at the poll. Make sure your voice is heard with the poll, and comment in the description of that, not in the description of this video, if you have any suggestions for that specifically, just so we can have a discussion there. So I've decided here on the spot, actually, to name this park Walker Park, after Thomas Walker, who we just discussed, and Thomas Walker's role in founding Cabrillo. This is Walker Park because not only that, but it is highly pedestrianized. I feel like Walker Park both has the historical angle to it, and also represents the park very well. So on the spot, I'm going to call that Walker Park. This is the other side of the peninsula, by the way. The other side, it's a railway, and we've got like a waterfront bike and pedestrian path, which is really cool. And then, you can see this from above. This is the peninsula, like the tip of the peninsula itself. On the right, we have a Hyatt hotel, which is connected to a parking garage with underground elevators. That's how people get over there. We've got a star monument, which would be great if you could name that, because I don't want to just call it Star Monument. This is California Avenue here, which is a really important street in the city's history. There was going to be a freeway actually built down this waterfront, but it was stopped by activists in Little Italy, because it was supposed to cut through Little Italy, which you'll see in a second. And it would have been a shame if that community was destroyed by a freeway that cut across downtown. We're kind of a little bit down the block from Little Italy, but this street leads there, to the hotel at the other end, as you can see. And this waterfront park, which is just it's had a lot of work done to it over time just to make it a truly awesome public space. But it's also got City Lights Books, which is historically the most important bookstore in Cabrillo. And we've got a place like that in Berkeley, or a couple of them that are really important. And City Lights Books, if you have a story for that, you can let me know. But I will go back to that building, though, because I just realized I forgot to place the prop for it. It's got the advertisement flags, but it will be placed. I will do that. Don't worry about that, because it's such an important spot in the city. But here is St. Paul Park in Little Italy here. This is, once again, a really important gathering space throughout history in Little Italy, and it overlooks so much overlooks it. And it's just this park that's one street over, and is nonetheless just really important public space. We've got the Italian American Club on the corner here. That's like the last block before you get to the Hyatt. Ooh, that tractor trailer just destroyed that guy. But yeah, vibrant little district here. You can look at all these people walking around. They're really embedded in their community. Their families have lived here forever, and it really makes for a vibrant community. And this is a little bit of a view of that apartment building that overlooks St. Paul Park from above. And this is Little Italy from above, which means it's time to end the video, because I know we've only got a couple cinematics left, so hopefully you enjoyed. If you enjoyed that discussion, make sure to leave a like on the video, let me know what you thought in the comments. Definitely follow me on Twitter for more urbanism content. Head over to my Discord to talk about cities over there. If you want to download the save game for Cabrillo, head over to my Patreon. Quick shout out to Anthony Perez, Asimwe Obaniarco, Cedric Atkinson, David, Tracy Larson, and VLDC 1000 for being patrons. And you get tons of other benefits like early access to videos over there or by becoming a YouTube member. But yeah, that's it. Hopefully you enjoyed. I will see you in the next episode of Cabrillo.